We begin with the president letting loose at a Washington black tie affair, joking about White House chaos, Jared Kushner's troubles getting a security clearance, and even his marriage to Melania. The mood was funny, lighthearted. But there are also some things the president said that may have serious undertones, especially what he said about the ongoing nuclear threat from North Korea. Here's the president's exact remark. I won't rule out direct talks with Kim Jong-un. I just won't. As far as the risk of dealing with a madman is concerned, that's his problem, not mine. Well, the president went on. By the way, a couple of days ago, they said we would like to talk. And I said, so would we. But you have to denuke. You have to denuke. So let's see what happens. Maybe positive things are happening. I hope that's true. We will be meeting and we'll see if anything positive happens. I want to bring in CNN White House correspondent Boris Sanchez. Boris, what is the White House saying about this call?
Hey there, Anna. Yeah, unexpected news coming from the Gridiron dinner last night. Historically, it's not an event that necessarily breaks news that way. Kind of surprising to hear the president discuss diplomacy there in the way that he did. Obviously, he was joking, but then it appears that he was somewhat serious about potentially moving forward with direct talks between the United States and North Korea, basing it yet again on the precondition that North Korea must denuclearize before there are any direct communications between the two countries. North Korea was certainly paying attention. They put out a statement writing, quote, "The U.S. that was terrified at the rapid development of our nuclear force and has continued to knock the door of dialogue now feigns an indifference and advances this or that precondition. Not being content with it, it insists that it'll have dialogue only for making the DPRK abandon nuclear weapons and persist in maximum pressure until complete denuclearization is realized. That is really more than ridiculous." So obviously the North Korean foreign ministry there not thrilled about the president's stance. CNN has reached out to the White House multiple times now to get clarity on the president's remarks and if there's been any progress made toward an actual moment of meeting. They have yet to respond, though. Anna.
All right, Boris, at the White House, thank you. So President Trump says North Korea, quote, called up, would like to talk with the U.S., but that the rogue nation would have to denuke first. The president adding he won't rule out direct talks with North Korea's reclusive leader, Kim Jong-un. Now, North Korea's response, as Boris pointed out, Trump's preconditions for talks are, quote, preposterous. Let's talk it over with two East Asia experts, Atlantic Council Senior Fellow Jamie Metzel and former Senior State Department Advisor Balbina Wong. All right, guys, Jamie, let's start with you. Does it look like these talks with North Korea are going to happen?
There are going to be some kind of talks with North Korea because they are just starting now between South Korea and North Korea. And it's likely that there could be some interaction between the Americans and the North Koreans. But one thing will be sure, because of the weakness and disarray of the U.S. administration, the Trump administration, those talks are going to be very likely in many ways on North Korea's terms, because North Korea is getting stronger in spite of all of the strikes against them, and the United States, unfortunately, is getting weaker because of the disarray in the White House.
Balbina, do you think this North Korea change of heart of sorts stemmed from the participation in the Olympics at South Korea? Was that a turning point?
Well, first, I disagree that I think that the North Korean position is necessarily stronger because the U.S. position is weaker. Regardless of whether the White House is currently in disarray or not, when it comes to North Korea, in fact, of all the foreign policy issues, this is the one issue where the United States, the Trump administration has actually been very consistent and has in fact rallied a very strong position towards North Korea in the multilateral arena, and in fact it has a very strong position towards North Korea. So North Korea indeed does have a strong position. I will agree with that. And where it is strong is that it has separated out talks with South Korea as a separate issue. So I'm not sure there is actually any new news. President Trump didn't really say anything new yesterday. There will probably be talks, but I think this is the exact same position and both sides are laying them out. North Korea will not give up its nuclear weapons, and the United States wants North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons.
Do you want to just follow up, Jamie, on why you believe that the U.S. position is weaker?
Yeah, so I completely disagree with my friend Balbina. And the reason why we are in this weak position is because the only real leverage that the United States has for pressuring North Korea is getting China to do more. And because the United States is in such a weak position, because the United States is antagonizing all of our allies and friends by stepping away from TPP, by telling Japan and South Korea in many ways that they're on their own, by doing all of the things that are having all of our allies and friends really worried about what we're going to do next, we have very little leverage over the Chinese, and so we've been not able to get the Chinese to do more. The North Koreans, like the Chinese, like the Soviets, recognize that America is as weak as we've been in generations, and so we are likely going to move forward with additional contacts with the North Koreans, not from a position of strength, but from a position of very unfortunate weakness.
But don't you think something is different given like the stalemate, this ignoring each other, shouting at each other has been broken, and now there are even talks about coming together in some fashion?
We've negotiated with the North Koreans in the past, and we've done it successfully with leverage. The North Koreans have always wanted to negotiate with the United States on an equal footing. And if we have negotiations with the North Koreans now, it will be on that equal footing because the North Koreans aren't going to give up their nuclear weapons, and so they have already established the status quo of their position. If the United States insists that we can't even talk before North Korea gives up its nukes, there won't be any talk. So already the decision has been made in some ways to accept what the new status quo that North Korea has created. And that's why I'm saying that this Trump administration, in spite of all of the bluster and all of the name-calling, has actually weakened the United States.
Balbina, should the U.S. talk to North Korea without preconditions?
Well, it's a good thing Jamie and I are friends, and so he knows that our differences are really about policy, nothing personal. But the premises are simply incorrect. First of all, China is not, absolutely not, the only leverage that we have over North Korea. In fact, it is very clear, it has been clear for the last 20 years, that the road to Pyongyang does not go through Beijing. And if we have learned nothing in the last 3 administrations, it's that China is not the way in which we are going to get North Korea to do what we need North Korea to do, number one. But the other thing is that nothing has really changed. And what has actually occurred, and it's been quite consistent since President Bush's administration, and President Obama did it very consistently, and now so has President Trump, and he has actually ratcheted this up, which is to increase the pressure on North Korea. So I think that actually that is the position of strength. Now, what is interesting is that South Korea and the United States have actually strengthened their alliance and their position of cohesiveness, despite the fact that President Moon is ideologically, supposedly, very, very different from where President Trump is. So I think we'll see, but I don't think that very much has changed at all in terms of the overall positions.
But Balbina, Moon, who you point out, has been close with President Trump, and the U.S. and the South Korea are saying they want to work together. But he's saying the U.S. should be willing to talk to North Korea without expecting them to give up their nuclear program at this juncture. Is it realistic for North Korea to say, sure, we're just going to denuclearize? Do you think that will ever happen? So if they don't, would talks even happen at all?
That is exactly the stalemate that we have been in, and this is exactly why the 6-party talks have been frozen since 2008. That is exactly why President Obama, despite all of the incredible efforts that were put in for 8 years, that North Korea simply did not come to the table. It's not because President Obama didn't try for 8 years. It's because North Korea didn't want to meet those conditions. And so again, the U.S. position has been very, very consistent. This is the one thing the Trump administration has not changed. And I don't think we should change that position. But you are correct. It is not realistic. North Korea will not come to the table giving up its nuclear weapons. This is exactly why all of this continues. And all of this rhetoric back and forth, that's what it is, simply is rhetoric.
The rhetoric of fire and fury, however, has changed.
Wait, it has changed.
Let me take this one to Jamie.
It has changed, and the rhetoric has been ratcheted way up, but there is no military option for the United States. The North Koreans know it, the South Koreans know it, Everybody knows it. Maybe Donald Trump doesn't know that.
I'm glad you bring that up, though, Jamie, because multiple sources with knowledge of White House thinking say the Trump administration is considering military action against North Korea if they successfully develop a nuclear missile capable of hitting the U.S. And we heard from CIA Director Mike Pompeo in January that he thought they were just a few months off from doing just that.
They are, and that is not real. They are bluffing or they are insane, because every time when they play out what a pinpoint attack on North Korea looks like, you end up with tens, hundreds of thousands of casualties. And these are casualties of American citizens living in Seoul. There's all kinds of destruction. So even Mattis, General Mattis and others have played this out. There is no military option. Everybody knows that the Trump administration is bluffing. It's simply not true what Balbina is saying, that U.S.-South Korean relations are at an all-time high. They are
I didn't
terrified.
say that. I actually did
I'll
not
give you
say
the
they were
last
an
word,
all-time high.
Balbina.
Well, actually, it is not true to say there is no military option. There always has been, and there always is.
No
it is
palatable
absolutely
military
true.
option.
Well, palatable, that I agree with. However, the military option is there, and that is precisely the point. The point is that right now, North Korea and actually quite a number of other countries in the world are not sure if this president is willing to use it or not. And that is exactly why North Korea is willing to entertain talks. That's exactly why we might finally be able to move forward.
I know
That's
you disagree,
why the
Jamie.
whole world
Because
is
it
terrified.
is a bluff.
Okay, Balbina and Jamie, thank you both. You both have so much expertise and different opinions. That's why we brought you together, so we could hear it all. Thanks again.
We're still friends.
Exactly. Well, China, of course, is another big topic related to North Korea. President Trump also trying to put the pressure on China with these tariffs that he is saying he's going to impose. And now he's also reacting to a bold move by China's president to end term limits. Trump's remarks coming at a weekend fundraiser at his Florida resort Mar-a-Lago. Let's listen.
Don't forget, China's great, and Xi is a great gentleman. He's now president for life. No, he's great. Hey, look, he was able to do that. I think it's great. Maybe we'll have to give that a shot someday.
Those remarks following the event that upset the stock market may have set the stage for a potential trade war with China a few days ago. His surprise move to slap tariffs on U.S. imports of steel and aluminum. Let's bring in CNN's Will Ripley live in Beijing's Tiananmen Square. Will, tell us about today's big event there.
Hey, Anna, yes, so the National People's Congress, China's top legislative gathering, is set to kick off at this building right over here, the Great Hall of the People. We've already had to pass through 2 layers of security just to get to this point, but you can see the Chinese military keeping us and everybody else a pretty far distance away. There are crowds out here. You can see a lot of people came earlier to see the flag raising, but one thing that you will not see here at Tiananmen Square are any protesters who oppose the move that China's about to make, abolishing presidential term limits, effectively allowing China's authoritarian leader Xi Jinping to be the president for life. A lot of people, pro-democracy activists in China, had hoped that he would allow the peaceful transfer of power after his second presidential term, but instead he's setting up a scenario that a lot of people fear could be a return to China's brutal dictatorship, the dictatorship of Mao Zedong that saw millions reportedly die during the Cultural Revolution. His portrait still hangs here in Tiananmen Square. This is a country that doesn't allow political dissent, a country that has a communist party that must be encouraged. Hearing President Trump, the leader of the free world, saying that he supports the idea of a president essentially ruling for life, somebody who's supposed to represent the voice of democracy in the world, saying he's on the side of authoritarian China and not on the side of people here in China who are trying to post on social media saying they disagree with this, because China has banned a lot of the terms that would allow people to criticize or make jokes about what's going to be happening in this building behind me. And even CNN's coverage, as we're speaking right now, in China is being blacked out. You have a piece of video from earlier when I was filing a report for CNN International. Anna, as soon as we start to talk about this, the censors cut our signal to black.
Wow.
That's how it works here in this country, and we're seeing, yeah, we're all right? Okay, yeah, we have credentials here. We're all right. We're good. Yeah, we're good. Thanks. Yeah, you can see it's even sensitive for us to be here. There are plainclothes police, there are police officers, people listening to what we're saying, and they don't like us talking about Tiananmen Square, which of course was the scene of a brutal crackdown in 1989. Remember, many people died here when pro-democracy activists turned out. You don't see any protesters out here today, and that's the way it works here in China, and apparently they have the backing of President Trump, Anna.
Will Ripley in Tiananmen Square. Thank you for that reality check, Will. Coming up,